I've completed the test drive questline 4 times in Escape from Tarkov. That's well over 200 PMC kills alone, and in today's video, I'll share my secrets to completing this questline easily every wipe. The test drive quest, especially test drive 3, really sucks. And the reason that is because the components are so expensive. I mean, just look at the suppressor. It's 700,000 and more just for a suppressor. People hate this quest so much, they've even complained on the Tarkov community website. And Applezord, the community manager for Battlestate, even said in March that they're going to change it. It's been 6 months and I'm not holding my breath any longer. You have to complete test drive to prestige. And in today's video, I'll share with you how I do it quickly and efficiently. So for test drive 1, you have to get 5 PMC kills from over 60 meters away while using an M1A with the specified attachments. The 2 attachments that are required are the Hybrid 46 and the Schmidt and Bender. In terms of gun builds, if money wasn't really concerned, I'd build something like this. This has solid ergo and recoil, and it's pretty good for the money. This second gun build is closer to what Proper already gives you, and it's definitely a more budget option, but it still gets the job done. The ergo is really low on this build though, so if that's a concern, you might want to go with the more expensive option. So in terms of maps I would run this on, I would definitely run this on woods primarily, and there's a couple different spots you can go to get kills. So my first spot would be this rock right here on woods. It allows you to look out towards the other cliffs over this way, and you can see a little bit of the sawmill. My next spot on woods would be the classic Sturman hunting hill. You can look out this way. And you can usually get people hunting Sturman along this there's a ridge right here you can kill them at. And you can just see the entire sawmill. So that's a good spot as well. My next spot is kind of obvious, but it's this big rock right here. Again, you're just looking for people at the sawmill, and you can commonly run into people that are coming from this side. So it's a good spot to check, and it's also a good spot just to look at if you're running around that area. Spine is not a bad spot. There's some trees here that the map doesn't really display, but you can still see a little bit of the sawmill. When you're on Spine, you're kind of more so looking towards Emercom camp. And you're going to catch people moving from Jaeger's Letter towards the sawmill. And you're going to want to wait for them to be out in this kind of area right here, out in the open, as they'll be, easier to kill. You can probably shoot them in the legs or something and then try and get more distance on them so you get the 60 meters locked in. And then of course you can go up here where the sniper scab is. I would just say it's like super obvious. If you shoot once, I would probably just get down and leave. It's just, you're kind of like asking to die if you go up here in my opinion, but I've done it before when I'm really desperate. An underrated part about the mountain is that if you go up on these secondary rocks, you can look out towards the village or the old sawmill, or even kind of the new area that's over here. It's not shown on the map, but it's right here. And then the last spot I'll show you guys is right here. So if you're over by USEC camp, there's a ridge over here with some rocks. You can look over towards USEC camp and you can catch people leaving as they're running across. The only problem is that if you're really on the edge here, you might be cutting it close with a 60 meter distance. If you kill people on this side though, you're definitely good. It'll be over 60 meters. So the next map I like to run my M1A on is going to be Shoreline, just because there's kind of a lot of long sight lines. If you spawn over at Path to Lighthouse right here, you can commonly run up this way and kind of look towards these cottages, or even out towards the little houses, and you can commonly see people looting and moving from this side to this side. And the next one I like is if you spawn down at the tunnel, you can run up this way, get on top of this hill, and then look back towards cottages, or even run up this way and then look towards this cliff coming up to west. So those are some common spots on the left side of the map. Of course, there's the pier. I've never really had luck camping in this spot. I've actually killed way more people trying to do Shooterborn in this spot than I have gotten kills there myself. Really, where you're going to get a lot of kills on Shoreline for your M1A is going to be on the right side of the map. So I would say this bottom right quadrant is kind of a hot zone, just because when multiple teams spawn, it's going to be kind of hectic. So oftentimes you'll get a spawn here and a team will spawn here. And if you are quick enough, you can run out this way and kind of catch them lollygagging through this area of the map. And then the same kind of happens on this side. So if you're the one spawning here, you can run south, kind of catch these guys lacking, sprinting this way. If you're really lucky, you'll spawn kind of right next to the weather station. You can get up in these rocks and foliage and just have a wide field of view just out on the whole blue fence area. these couple spawns, and even, you know, you can see a little bit of this side. So that's kind of where you're going to see a lot of the action. I always hear shots in this part of the map to start the raid, and, you know, this is a way you can capitalize on that. The only other spot I could think of was, you know, the ref building on customs. There's this metal, doesn't show on this map, but there are these metal kind of layers you can stand on where you have to stash the DVL. And you can see pretty far down this road, as well as if you go inside ref building on these rafters, you can look out this way and get kind of a longer sight line. I just think this area is like super, like it's just super obvious. So it's not something I'd recommend to, you know, do all 5 kills. But if you're struggling on the other maps and you kind of have to do stuff on customs, I could see this working out. Real quick though, if you guys are enjoying this video and want to see more Tarkov guides, please subscribe. Apparently 96% of you guys are not subscribed, so I'd really appreciate it, as I'm trying to get to 1,000 subscribers by 1.0. So for test drive 2, you have to eliminate 20 PMCs on streets using the SR2M with the suppressor and the SR2 sight. And I can show you a gun build real quick to see what that looks like. So this is how I typically build my SR2M. The only variation you can really make is, you know, what type of laser you want on here. I go with the TBL just because it's cheap. I don't typically do like flashlight abuse, but if you do, you can switch to something that allows you to do that. The only other tactical device I use is the WMX because it allows you to have the hip fire bonus without giving away that you have your laser on. So that's something you could do as well. And then other than those, you could also add this sight shade. It adds 2 ergo, but I just don't like the way it looks when it's on. I mean, it's a personal preference thing at the end of the day. I think it just like makes it harder to see what's actually inside the scope. I can show that for you real quick as well. Yeah, so this is what it looks like with the sight shade. As you can see, it's snappy, but I mean, it's hard to see actually what's inside the scope. And then this is what you see without the sight shade. So I just prefer without the sight shade. I don't really notice the 2 ergo. I don't think you will either. But yeah, that's how I run it. So for test drive 2, I see kind of 3 main ways of completing this task. Number 1 is just gonna be getting kills off spawn and pushing people in the first 5 minutes of raids. The spawns are really predictable on streets, and they spawn people close together. So you're often going to have fights at the beginning of raids. And I mean, to be frank, you're going to die a lot at the beginning of raids. That's just kind of how streets is, and you got to get used to that. But that's a easy way to run into way more people, is just to push people off spawns. Another way to kind of get this task done quicker is to go to Kaban, you know, go to Lexos and try and clear that, or just like play around that area of the map. Just because people go to that pretty much 100% of the raids, and you can often find players to fight there. I would also recommend going to Tar Bank and the post office, just because there's so many tasks in that area that you're going to run into players all the time there as well. Just a note though, you're going to run into a lot of player scavs after the first like 10-15 minutes of the raid. So that's something to think about. You kind of want to get in and get out as quick as possible on streets. And if you're not doing that, then you want to be really quiet and just keep moving around the map, because player scavs are so annoying on streets. The last way to kind of do this task is kind of passively looting and questing around the map. Just because there are so many quests on streets, it's easy to kind of just come into raid to say, okay, I'm going to go to the vet clinic or the school, and I'm going to do this task. And you'll definitely run into players along the way, and you don't have to think about like, oh, I'm going to push this spawn, or I'm going to go to Kaban. It could be something that's more passive for you, and you can focus more on looting and getting those quest items if you want. Some of my favorite keys to loot on streets are MVD, Finance Office, Finance Small Office, and all the Concordia keys. Relaxation Room is good, but if anyone sees you in there, you're likely just dead, because there's only one way in and one way out. It's just super easy to camp. What I love about these keys is MVD, Finance, and all the Concordia keys, they have a lot of valuable item spawns where you get bitcoins or just statues or, you know, things you need for prestige. So it's actually really helpful. And then MVD has a lot of good ammo spawns, even outside the key. So that one's good as well, especially leading up to the next test drive. My last tip for test drive 2 is that you want to bring your green flare. That green flare is super helpful just to have another way of leaving the map. And it kind of allows you to, if you spawn on the shopping mall side, to just stay in that area the entire raid, loot up, you know, fight scavs, fight players, do whatever, and then just like stay in one area of the map so you don't have to cross like these dangerous choke points and everything. Bringing green flares really helped my survival rate during this quest and kind of made it easier just for me. So before we move on to test drive 3, some common choke points and kind of areas we're going to fight players off of spawn are going to be down in the bottom left here. This spawn right here and this spawn right here are going to be fighting most every single raid. So what happens typically is if this person runs this way, then this person will, typically go right here and wait and shoot them. Or this person will come this way and push down a little bit and wait for them to run down this road. That's a common one to see off of spawn. Another really common one is up in the top left. So right here at the museum, what's going to happen is you're going to run out this way. Pretty much every raid, someone spawns at Expo. So they're going to be running this way. They have this long sprint and you're just going to see them with your SR2 and not going to be able to shoot them at all because you don't have a long range. So you're going to come this way, you're going to go down this alley, or you're going to go around this way and wait at this truck. I think every time I've spawned here, I fought someone right here in this alley. So if you get either of these spawns, that's just really something to think about. And you have to decide kind of split second, hey, do I want to fight at the beginning of this raid or, what do I want to do? Another one I've run into more recently is I'll spawn in this Cardinal Hotel area and I'll just pretty much camp this alley player. It's kind of scummy, but these test drive kills aren't going to, do themselves. And this player is really vulnerable. Oftentimes they'll make the mistake of looting this area, which just means I can get even closer and just wait for them. And then the last area that people will think about when they're, having these spawn fights is this room right here. They'll often just run out across this area. But if they run this way, then they'll fight this team. And then oftentimes you'll also see this team kind of get involved. If this team decides to run straight towards relax, this team will often run into them. So for test drive 3, you have to get 20 PMC kills while using an AK-12 with a suppressor and a Valde. And the real kicker for this quest is that it's all on Lighthouse. If you played Lighthouse at all, you kind of just understand how bad the map is to move around and how many choke points there are, especially with the rogue camp. It's really hard to move around on that side of the map. So you're kind of forced to fight people at the chalet or the resort. And it's just super ratty in terms of how people play. I swear I've been extract camp more on Lighthouse than any other map in Tarkov, even Reserve. In terms of gun build, this is how I build out my AK-12. As you know, the required parts of the AK-12 suppressor, which is just so expensive this wipe because of trader flipping limitations and all that. What's worthwhile to check though is there's a drain cleaner barter. There's 2 drain cleaners for 1 suppressor. So right now you can see it's an arbitrage. It's 420,000 for an AK-12 suppressor that is normally 700k, 600k. And then the next required part is the Valde. This is common enough, and if you kind of make a point to stack them up over the wipe, by the time you get to this task, you'll probably have enough to do it, but it's not that expensive, compared to the suppressor, it just being uber expensive. In terms of the parts that I think are really important for this build, definitely the AK Evo. So this is a new stock they added, I think, last wipe, and it's got the best in slot stats. So it's got minus 28% recoil and plus 15 ergo. That's like best in slot, and all it takes is a vodka to barter. So it's actually really cheap and kind of really affordable. And then I like to run the sniper kit pistol grip. This is just the best in slot, I think, so not really too much to discuss there. I run 60 rounders. Sometimes I'll run the 45 rounders just because the ergo is a lot better on that, but I won't run 30 rounders just because 545 kind of sucks and you need a lot of bullets to kill people. Then I just run the SE5. You can run something like the SI Cobra if you want to save a little bit. You can also run the RVG Black if you want dollars spent on Peacekeeper. This is a good option. And then I like to run the WMX just because I like to hide my laser and I like to have my hipfire bonus, especially for like inside chalet or inside the resort area. So before we get into the map, I just want to say you should definitely buy the Red Rebel if you're just starting this quest. It's going to make leaving the map so much easier, as you can just leave right behind the blue chalet and just get in and out. You get 1 or 2 kills, immediately leave, just to kind of reset and get out of there quickly. So on Lighthouse, the most consistent way to run into people and to actually get engagements is definitely pushing other people's spawns. Whenever I spawned here at the road leading up to the chalet, most people run towards the chalet and go for the loot. I actually go the opposite direction. I run towards Southern Road. And what I do is I wait along these rocks, and oftentimes this person will run right here and try and snipe people down on the beach. Or when they see no one, they'll come along this way. And if you're just waiting on this ridge right here, you can literally just, look down and kill them. They're pretty much a free kill. Loot their stuff, go to Southern Road. It's very quick, very repeatable. And that's something I just like to do, as it kind of like gets the fight out at the beginning of the raid. Now, if you spawn up here, either of these two spawns, you only have one choice really. You're either fighting this player or you're running the other way and you're trying to survive. Me personally, I like to try and fight them, but I understand if you're on the more northern side, it's definitely a hard fight and they kind of just have one angle to look at. Whereas if you're up on the southern side, there's trees, there's rocks, there's foliage to hide behind, and it makes it harder for this side to kind of fight back. If you spawn along the beach, any of these spawns right here, I typically either run straight towards the chalet, or if I spawn right here by Lightkeeper, sometimes I'll just like hide in this house and look up towards the sniper rock, just because oftentimes all this southern road person is thinking about is sniping you, and you can get in a good position and kind of wait for them to peek their head over. Now, if you spawn here, I honestly just push this way, either get on top of this like kind of like obvious rock, or I go along the side and try and push this person, see if they looted Marin, and then I push over to resort afterwards if I don't run into them. Now, if you're struggling with the spawn fighting or anything like that, you can of course just sit inside the chalet or resort. I mean, it's pretty scummy, but a lot of people do it anyways. I don't think this video is going to change that. As well as the fact that if you get there early enough, you can probably find a Bitcoin or a bunch of stems. There's a ton of loot on Lighthouse. It's just, getting out is actually the hard part. And then real quick, in terms of keys that I like the USEC safe keys on this map at the resort. I also like Marin key, and I used to like Hillside House key, but I literally get nothing from it every single time, so I stopped running that a while ago. And then for test drive 4, 5, and 6, I'm going to be much quicker on these just because they don't require PMC kills, and they can be scav kills on all these maps, so that's really helpful and makes it a lot easier. So for test drive 4, you have to use the RPDN, and you have to use this 1P78 scope. And you have to get 30 target eliminations on shoreline. That's honestly not that bad. I mean, the scope kind of sucks, but it's a pretty easy gun to use. You just load it up with PS, and then you put that scope on, you just bring it over shoreline. You can also just quest during this, or loot Voron key. That's what I like to do, at least when I'm doing this quest, and makes it a lot easier. I would definitely recommend you go at night though, as more players can be trying to loot and quest and do these things, and you can just focus on killing scavs. In terms of best areas to find scavs, I always find them at this kind of water treatment center. I also find a lot at the cottages, and then this village is a good spot as well. I see a couple at the weather treatment station, but it's not that common. And then the best spot by far, I'd say, on this map is probably the new smuggler's base. I've literally gotten like 10 to 15 in one raid just killing them here, so that makes it a lot easier in my opinion. And then in case you do die, Mechanic has an RPD and barter for the military circuit board and a cyclone. And then I typically build my RPD like this with the shorter barrel, as it gives you a bit more ergo. And then of course the sight that is required for the quest. Moving on to test drive 5, this is kind of where it gets actually fun. You have to use the Uzi Pro with the 240mm barrel, SBR stock, and boss reflex sight, and you have to get 50 kills on factory of any type. The Uzi Pro is kind of just a fun gun to use, and it's actually like good, so I really enjoy this part of the quest. There's not really much to getting kills on factory. You're literally just running around like a madman trying to kill people. Scavs will spawn all over as the raid progresses. You don't really need to go to a specific area and camp or anything like that. In terms of gun build, this is how I build mine out. I use the A3 M-Lock just because it adds a grip and it allows you to use a tactical device, and that's pretty much it. There's not much to the build. Most of the requirements are where you normally put other things. So for test drive 6, you have to use the Atlas Defense Velociraptor on customs and get 50 kills. These are kills of any kind again, so you don't need to kill PMCs for this quest. And the Velociraptor is actually kind of a cool gun, so I actually like this quest because I don't really use that gun outside of this quest. And then in terms of weapon build, there's not too many variations on the Velociraptor, but I typically switch the pistol grip over. I add the CSS AK. Really, your main choice is going to be the dovetail between the B13 if you want a lower mount, or the Cobra if you want to add a tactical device. I typically go with the B13 just because it's mounted much lower. And then I add a Night Force and usually a Voodoo. You can also add 45 rounders if you want to add a little bit more capacity. It doesn't really hurt your ergo too much at 65, so that's definitely an option. And then in terms of areas where I get a lot of scav kills is I'd say the ref building for sure right here. You got a ton there. Old gas and new gas. They've kind of coded it, I think, with that one Jaeger quest where they'll spawn more here. Then in this area right here across from new gas, I find a lot of scavs, as well as down in this building. Also, next to Crack House and Stronghold, I find a lot of scavs, so those are 2 spots you can check as well. And that's pretty much it. If you enjoyed this video, like and subscribe, and leave a comment down below for the YouTube algorithm.